Hello and welcome to When Football Began Again, the podcast that takes a nostalgic look at the Premier League era. Today's show is a best bits compilation, some of my favourite guests and moments from Series 1 of the show. Series 2 will be launching very, very soon, and I have some amazing guests lined up for you. But in the meantime, these best bits compilations are just to whet your appetite and maybe catch up on the bits you've forgotten about or episodes you may have missed in Series 1. On today's show, there's Masai Graham talking about how he pretty much studied for a GCSE in Newcastle United back in the mid-90s. There's the Premier League's greatest ever Albanian. Let me tell you, the competition is stiff for that one. Comedian Harvey Hawkins chats through his Coventry City cult heroes. Fran Jenking recreates Eric Cantona's infamous Sardines press conference, an impression that will reverberate through the ages. And then Phil Walker recalls being a fan in the stands at Old Trafford against Liverpool when King Eric made his return 9 months later. Swansea fan Simon Emanuel explains why Leon Britton is such a cult hero. Comedian Josh Pugh tells us why Jamie Vardy would be his pick to rescue him from a deserted island. And as always, we finish off with Play Your Apps Right with our Swindon Town episode, which was a very competitive round indeed. As ever, please do consider sharing the show with a fan that you think might enjoy it as well. Do subscribe on YouTube, on wherever you get your podcasts, and leave me a review if you would. I'll be back with Season 2 very soon. In the meantime, enjoy this, part 3 of When Football Began Again, the best bits.
Wasn't really into football, but when I joined high school, I was sent to a high school where I didn't know anyone. Everyone was into football, and it was like a social thing. We weren't really a football household, and everyone at school was mentioning Newcastle this buzz. No one supported them, so I was like, yeah, that's my team. That's my team. I'm going to pick them. But then, like, people at class would test me on stuff, and I wouldn't know, and they'd be like, So we'd have the stickers, so I'd try and learn the players. And I used to think the players with the most exotic names are going to be the better ones. So, like, I had this sticker, Nicky Papavassilou, he's good, isn't it? And they'd be like, crap, he doesn't even know how good the players are. But then I started, like, going, you know, in, like, Karate Kid or Rocky, that montage where they train. So for like 6 months, I'm there reading staying up to watch Match of the Day. And then stupidly, the first time I watched Match of the Day, we beat Swindon 7-1. And I remember going into school the next day on a high. Yeah, Steve Watson scored twice. Robert Lee scored twice. Reeling everything up. Rule Fox scored the final goal. I went to turn up one day and going, Andy Cole hat-trick. My son, you see Andy Cole scored this hat-trick. And I went, what's a hat-trick? And I went, look, he doesn't know. He doesn't know anything about football. What team did you buy Darren Peacock from? I was like, I don't know. It's QPRC, he doesn't know. This is a running theme of what I went, right, this is my team. I'm going to do my research. And I fell in love that way.
Masai, your school days sound horrific. Revise for your football team.
Well, it only lasted 6 months, because when I did like my 2 weeks of montage research, I was untouchable then. And it was only a 6-month thing, Stevie, but it was very intense. Getting off the bus at school and one of the year 7s going, you sold Andy Cole to Man United? I was like, shut up, you idiot, because I went to bed early that night, didn't see news at 10. Back then, you don't have the internet or a mobile phone. And I went in the shop and I turned over the paper, and there it was, holding the Man United top.
Mas, I love it. You seem to get your news sources from people just shouting at you.
Yeah, I know.
This was Twitter in the 90s. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're going to do now a new feature, which is Hall of Fame Premier League player. Each week we are going to take each nation on planet Earth that have had footballers represent them in the Premier League. And we're going to start off alphabetically, and that takes us to Albania. Now, it's a pretty long and illustrious list, guys. Brace yourselves. There are 2 Albanian Premier League footballers at the time of recording after 30 complete seasons of the Premier League. They are, with 33 appearances and 6 goals between 2019 and recently 2022, Chelsea forward Armando Broja, who may well not be Chelsea forward by the time this goes out. Just behind him on the appearance list is Lorik Sana with 31 appearances and 6 clean sheets in Sunderland's 2010-11 defence. Now, we will put this to a public vote, but we wanted to hear your opinion on who, for the two of you, starting with you, Marv, is the greatest Albanian Premier League export.
Well, Broja's a good player, isn't he? He's a really No. I'm just saying, from that perspective, he's a really good player. Against him, for me, is that he's actually registered as a Chelsea player, and I'm not a fan of the way Chelsea have harvested and they gather talent and then just loan it, farm it out. So that is on a downside for me. I'm not sure the greatest Albanian can be born in Slough. I'm not sure that can be allowed. And for me, it's the other lad. It's old Lorik. He's the one. And from his Wikipedia page, I saw that he's the grassroots ambassador for children's football in Albania. So that pips it for me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Lorik Kana for me all the way. I mean, he also was not born in Albania. He's Kosovan. And he's
closer than Slough, though, James, isn't it? To be fair,
he's next door.
If I'm shoving a pen in a map,
yeah. He's also quite the looker, I think. In his Wikipedia picture,
yeah,
he looks like he's got a bit of a. Looks like he'd be the lead singer of a metal band in the 90s.
You've both very much come at this from different angles, but Lorik Sana is the unlikely leader. We're going to put this on Twitter and we're going to make a public vote. So we will crown the ultimate Albanian Premier League footballer, but you've heard what Marv and James think. So that takes us... Yes, James?
Also on Lorik Kana, and the best bit, in my experience, the best bit of any footballer's Wikipedia page is personal life. Right? That is where the gold is. If they don't have that, there's nothing interesting. But go to the personal life. He's a UN ambassador against poverty, as Marv has alluded to, and he has stated that archaeology is one of his biggest interests. So, but he's basically Indiana Jones. So he's got the rugged good looks of Harrison Ford. He's interested in archaeology. Whenever the ball came towards him, he ran away. I'd say it's definitely got to be him.
Yeah, I think Broja's going to earn a bit more, but if I'm having a night out, I'm going out with Lorik.
Okay, we've worked out the perfect Albanian.
Also, Lorik Kana's 39, Broja's 20. There's no way I'm going out for a drink with Broja. You'll have nothing.
Yeah, what does he know about the 1992-93 season, James?
Exactly.
The first match I'd like you to pick is a Premier League game featuring Coventry City. What game would you go for?
Yeah, well, after how I started the podcast, it's no surprise that it comes from the 97-98 season. But there is a match that I think a lot of Coventry fans would probably answer the same way to this. Was Man United 2, Coventry 3. And there was sort of quite an iconic Darren Huckabee goal that clinched it, a bit of a solo run. But that's probably the standout game, I think, certainly my lifetime of Premier League era.
And that was just the best Man United team, wasn't it? I mean, that really was a team, the players that they had. And Coventry at that time as well were, fighting to stay above the waterline season in, season out. And then Darren Huckabee, I mean, he was just an absolute revelation, wasn't he, when he came into the team?
Amazing player. It's surprising that, he had a good career, but when you saw his talent, it's surprising he didn't sort of go up another level and sort of be on the Champions League teams, really, because he had that talent. Again, I'm saying this having watched a lot of sort of clips rather than live games, admittedly, but some of the things that he would do was just ridiculous. But yeah, that Man United team, as you say, had your Beckhams and your Scholeses, and Sheringham and Solskjaer scored for them. So it was all the big guns, and good times.
Well, that's a great start, and that Darren Huckabee goal, for anyone who remembers that, is that's an iconic Premier League goal.
Mm.
So Coventry were one of the original teams when the Premier League was founded in 92-93. They're actually only one of three teams with longer top flight. There's only 3 teams, with longer top flight stays, and I think that was Liverpool, Everton, Arsenal. So Coventry were mainstays of the top flight.
do you go back and kind of watch those Premier League years? We've kind of touched on the VHS, but those kind of Premier League era kind of things, is that something that's remembered with quite a bit of nostalgia, both for you and I guess the wider fan base?
Yeah, I think certainly the wider fan base, and I think we as a fan base have probably got a bit of a chip on our shoulder sometimes about how we're deemed by the wider football world, because in our minds we're, as you say, we were a mainstay of the Premier League for such a long time. Well, top flight, obviously, before Premier League, for such a long time, and it's amazing how we're just not considered that anymore. But I suppose we've been out of it for so long, and you get new generations that just see us as a lower league team. But yeah, as a club, we whenever we used to have a new manager, it was the proverbial, they're a sleeping giant, and that kind of is how we saw ourselves. But I think we've come to the realization now that the football world has changed so much, and we've kind of missed that boat that set off with all the money, and it's very difficult now to establish ourselves again as a Premier League team. I think most of our fan base would kind of accept we're a championship team, really.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we haven't even been that for a number of years. So it's only been recently that we've kind of accepted that that's where we are again.
And I think, obviously the Championship's such a fantastic division, such an entertaining division. And there are many, many teams in the Championship and fans of teams in the Championship who are more than happy to be, kind of almost that's the level that they aspire to be at and would want to be at, perhaps even above the Premier League. Is that something, do you kind of have that dream of seeing Coventry back in the Premier League? Is it not? Does it matter that much to you, or is the Championship kind of where it's at?
No, I'd love to go to the Premier League. I think that's the dream. I mean, there was a spell last season when we were on the fringes of the playoffs quite late into the season, and just the idea of going to your Old Traffords and your Anfields and, well, I'm about to say White Hart Lane, obviously not White Hart Lane, but that's what you're in football for. You want to be playing against the best teams in the biggest stadiums. And I mean, the Championship's great. It's good fun. Anyone can beat anyone and all that sort of stuff. But the reason it's so good is because the prize is the Premier League.
Yeah.
So, that's definitely where we'd love to be. Even if it's just a season, come straight back down, don't win a game. Brilliant.
Okay, this was a season of much publicised controversy. We'll go through a few of the incidents. I'll get your thoughts on maybe why this was happening as well. Perhaps the most high profile happened in January 1995 when Eric Cantona assaulted a Crystal Palace fan over abuse he received while leaving the pitch following a red card at Selhurst Park. During the trial in May 1996, Crystal Palace supporter Matthew Simmons claimed that he had shouted, "Off, off, off, it's an early bath for you, Mr. Cantona." Before...
as football supporters do. That's the kind of thing. Off, Mr. Cantona. It's an early bath for you, sir.
Presumably doffing his cap and taking a large inhale on his pipe. It was contested that he actually shouted, "Fuck off back to France, you French bastard," before calling Cantona a French animal, which is fairly non-specific, and referring to his mother as a French whore. Fairly specific, credit where it's due. After being given a £500 fine, which was a decent deposit on a two-bed semi in 1995, and a year-long stadium ban for abusive behaviour, Simmons launched himself over the bench at Cantona's lawyer, kicking and grabbing prosecutor Geoffrey McCann, who was dealing with his final case before retirement. During the attack, Simmons reportedly yelled, "I'm innocent, I swear on the Bible." This incident landed him a week in prison and further fined. Simmons would hit the headlines again some 15 years later for an attack on the former manager of his son's football team. So out of character, it could be said.
Yeah.
What a band.
Cantona was very remorseful, as you can imagine. Reflecting on the incident years later, he said, "I did the kung fu kick on the hooligan because these kind of people shouldn't be at games. It's a dream for some to kick these kind of people. It's not the kind of thing you see every day." Cantona himself was stripped of the French captaincy, banned for 9 months by the FA, and received a 2-week prison sentence that was later reduced to community service. Fran, what do you remember about that famous Cantona press conference, and can you impersonate what happened for anyone who missed it?
Well, you know me, I don't normally do impressions and various voices, but when the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much. And it's just, again, like, you know, it was just a moment where you're like, this guy is bonkers. And then you see what a character is. It's an insight into the man himself. And a guy who did all his talking with his feet, also at Selhurst Park as well, obviously, with his kung fu kicks. But did all his, what a character, what a player. Absolutely fantastic. And a real off-the-wall kind of response. And I think there's a response from the room as well. All the journalists and the press are there. And I think they just burst out laughing as soon as he just finishes his statement and walks off.
I think it's fair to say it does add to the legend and the iconic player that is Eric Cantona. Elsewhere, Dennis Wise was convicted of. Newcastle start the season on fire and win 7 of their first 8 games to top the table at the beginning of October. That's when a certain Eric Cantona returns from his lengthy ban to face Liverpool on the 1st of October. The Frenchman struts out of the tunnel at Old Trafford in front of a sea of French flags before assisting Nicky Butt's opener after just 2 minutes, and then equalises from the spot to rescue a point and leave the Red Devils 4 points off the pace. As one fan says to the Sky Sports cameras, God's back. Phil, what do you remember about that game and the long-awaited return of King Eric Cantona?
Well, I was actually at that game, and yeah, when he came back out, it was like that movie Gladiator. I can only imagine being in those days of the gladiators in Rome at the Colosseum. It was literally like that. He just walked out, and he just walked out like this. I own this place. This is, people thought he was like cocky and arrogant, and maybe he wasn't in a way, but he backed it up so well. He was just amazing, and he had this aura about him. You see some certain players, and they're great players, but the really, really super great players, the Messis and people like that. Cantona he just seemed to have that extra moment on the ball. The ball seemed to glue to him, and people kind of froze around him. And you could see players looking at him as if they were in awe of him. The opposition players, and he was the final piece in the jigsaw for Manchester United. I think all those young players that we've mentioned that were coming through, they looked up to him, and the way he trained, the way he looked after himself, because he was a super fit individual. He was, he had it all, and I think those players, he just took them to his level along with him. Your Giggsies and Sharp and all those players that came through, they had him to look up to, and what an amazing thing to have.
I think one of the things that I enjoyed about Cantona was kind of like looking back now. Obviously, we're in an age where we didn't have access to internet gossip 24/7. Like, he arrived, like, I believe he went on trial at Sheffield Wednesday when he originally turned into the Premier League. Didn't get signed by Sheffield Wednesday because they played on a plastic pitch. So the manager at the time was going, well, we want to see what he's like on grass. Like, then he ends up at Leeds, and then he has season at Leeds, ends up at United. So prior to Sheffield Wednesday, not many people had really heard of Cantona. And then this enigma just arrives.
Yeah.
And like, he's just there, and he's so good. And like, no one's ever seen anything like this before. And then he goes, as quickly as he came, he goes. And you're like, where's he gone? Nobody knows. He just lives in the mountains now. You're like he's literally like, he has his own like imagery, isn't he? It's just incredible. Like, doesn't consider coaching, doesn't consider punditry, whatever. He's just like, no, I'm gone. Bye everyone. Like, and it only Cantona can do.
And becomes a movie star for a short while. Let's not forget as well.
And he's done theatre as well. But I think he's one of those guys. He just got out at the very top. He just went, this is me at my peak. I can't get any better than this. And he just walked away. He didn't want to go down and play in the lower leagues, or just come on as a sub now and again. That wasn't Cantona. Players like that, like Cristiano, and they have to be the main men. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen for them. And I think that's what he was. He was the main man.
Yeah, 100%. And he was so missed towards the end of the 94-95 season by Manchester United. He's now back. He's going to have a huge impact on this season. So one of the most remarkable stories of Swansea's rise to the Premier League is the story of Leon Britton. He played against Hull City while on loan from West Ham in that deciding game and was Player of the Year in 2002-03 for you. He briefly left for Sheffield United, a decision he later called a mistake, before returning to help guide you to promotion, lift a League Cup and play in Europe. He made 149 top-flight appearances. While there were no goals and just one assist, he was famously labelled the pass master of all of Europe with a pass completion rate of 93.3%, putting him above Scholes, Carrick, Yaya Touré and the entire Barcelona midfield that season. It's worth adding that Joe Allen was 10th on that same list, just behind Sergio Busquets. Does the label club legend do Leon Britton justice at Swansea?
Absolutely not. I think we should rename the stadium the Leon Britton Stadium. He was absolutely incredible for us for what he did when he first came in. I think he was 17 years old when he came to us on loan, and he was a winger because he had a bit of pace. I remember he was out on the wing, but even then he was going past players. He never misplaced a pass. He was essential in that season to keeping us up, and then what he's done for us since is just incredible. When he left for Sheffield United, I don't know what it was about the club, and maybe it's the role that he was playing in, but it wasn't really sort of ticking for him. It wasn't working. And I remember the first game he came back. It was like we had our engine back in the middle in the midfield. He was so important. He's created so many chances for us. It's unbelievable. Like I'd love to know exactly how many goals were scored by Swansea in that time period from an assist from Leon Britton. It's probably astounding.
And I think the other thing, it's remarkable, there aren't many sides who go literally from the fourth tier all the way up to the Premier League to go into Europe to win a trophy. That's rare enough. To then have a player that pretty much goes on that entire journey with you. I mean, it is Roy of the Rovers stuff, isn't it?
It's crazy. The only one I can remember that happening was with they didn't win a trophy, but when Nick Bambi left Liverpool and went back to his boyhood club Hull, and they were in the lower division, and he ended up then playing in the Premier League with them. He took them all away, and I love that. I love that story of people going back to their clubs to help out like that. But yeah, the Leon Britton was, and I actually think Leon Britton retired a bit too soon as well, because he was retiring at the end of the Premier League season, and I think he probably could have done a job for us in the Championship for a few years as well.
Yeah, what a player. What we like to do on the deserted island is give guests the opportunity of an escape. So what I'd like you to do is select a Premier League player, could be a current or former Premier League player, to attempt a rescue mission for you. There is a caveat to this. If the rescue mission fails, you will have to see out your days on the island with this player. With that in mind, who are you going for?
There can only be one for me, Carl. Jamie Vardy.
It's the obvious.
He's who I want rescuing me. He's probably coming on a pedalo he's nicked. I think he'd fight. I think he'd fight people if he needed to. I think he'd. I just think he'd be. And if we don't do it, I think we'd have a great time on the island.
Yeah.
I love Vardy, man. He's so. I remember listening to a podcast. First started listening on my commute to work. Podcasts were just coming out, really, and I just typed in football podcasts, and one of the only podcasts on there was Leicester City one, and it turned out they just signed somebody, Jamie Vardy, and he was like, he wasn't even anywhere near the first choice, but they said, oh, he's got something. His attitude, and another one, more quality than you realise. Is like his whole thing is like, fuck you, fuck off. That's his whole attitude, and I think it's took him so far. And I'd love him to try and rescue me. I'd absolutely love it. And if not, we're having a great time. It's basically, you could see him in Benidorm, couldn't you? Just be like, yeah, he's great, man.
I mean, it's an incredible career, and his goal scoring record speaks for itself. But to come to the game so late on as well, and a little bit like you talked about with Rooney, he's another player that kind of gives all footballers hope, because I was involved in non-league football quite a bit at that time, and there were literally 22, 23-year-old lads where normally at that point, if they've not broken through into the professional game, that they've kind of written it off. And Vardy was this story of not only doing that to the top level, but literally becoming an England international. I mean, it's incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of, I don't know if it's our education or how our structure is, but you don't stop improving when you get to 20 at football. You haven't finished getting better then. And it's kind of, people think if they're not there then, they're never going to be there. But if you really, really love it and you can stay in it and you keep yourself dead fit, and I think you need an attribute. I think you need to be a real, if you've got a super strength, if you can deliver a ball, or if you're great in the air, if you can score, if you're quick, and you've got something to offer, you can have a career in football. You really can. Yeah, and he was obviously a massive example of that. But there's a few, and they Stuart Pearce, another, Ian Wright, because people will always slip through the net, no matter how good scouting systems are. Same with comedy. People, absolute gems out there who aren't anywhere near where they could be and will end up. People will always slip through the net. There's always exceptions to the rule. And he's that, and he's just great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking up at him. Did you realise that Jamie Vardy's best man at his wedding was David Nugent? Which, I just enjoyed that.
Yeah, I like that. I like
that. Another England goal scorer, famously, albeit from about half a yard.
You know what? Why not? Why not going? He ain't getting called up again. Definitely steal that. I reckon he took kit with him as well after. I bet he didn't hand his tracksuit back. So I'm having this.
Yeah, I think he nicked it off Jermaine Defoe as well. Like he just chased it in.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, nicest man ever.
And is there a Premier League game that you would have struck from the records forevermore? You can take it to the deserted island with you. It can be for personal reasons, a match that may have changed the course of history, or just something obscure. You have the power to place 90 minutes in room 101. What would you go for?
Well, I've actually gone a bit bigger. I'm banning Manchester United from playing Wolves ever again.
Okay.
It's never a good game. They play each other every 3 weeks for some reason. There's never goals. It's just always an awful fixture, and I want it gone.
That is bang on. Man United, like already it feels like a 0-0, doesn't it? Man United.
It feels like a 0-0. It feels an awful game of football that I'm not willing to watch.
So it's gone.
It's gone.
How can we change the rules of football for that so that Man United and Wolves don't play 36 games a season? What are we going to do to replace it?
I think they still do something, but I just think it's just not football. I think they do go bowling or something, or quiz or something. Settle it some way so it's the fixtures. But yeah, it can't be. They can't play football against each other because it's just not. It's a complete clash of styles. It just stinks out. It's stinking out the league.
I would absolutely love to see Adama Traore play David De Gea at darts. That would be just. You're going to go head to head with our game. Play your apps right. So, if you've never heard this game before, we're going to start you off with a familiar former Premier League player and the number of appearances they've made in the Premier League. I'll then give you another player. You need to tell me if that second player has made more or fewer appearances in a higher or lower format. This is Premier League appearances since 1992, so it does not include top flight appearances before that. And whoever's got control of the board after 11 players will be our winner. The prize, guys, is precisely nothing. So we're playing for fun.
Bragging rights.
Exactly. So we're going to start off for control of the board. I'm going to give you both a player. You're going to tell me how many appearances, and whoever gets closest will be able to choose if they go first or second. So the first player, the Premier League appearances I'm looking for, is the Premier League appearances of Jan Åge Fjørtoft. What are your guesses, Rich?
Ooh.
So it's Swindon, it's Middlesbrough, it's Sheffield United and Barnsley, none of them of which do too well. So I'm going to go 155.
Okay. Joe?
I've got a strange mental image that it's not as, I don't know why, I'm contacting the runes. I'm not sure it's in the full century, so I'm going to go for 93.
Well, Joe, firstly, well done for playing sportingly there and not just going for one lower. It is actually 84 appearances.
Wow.
So you have
championship player.
You have control of the
Wow.
board, Joe. Would you like to go first or second? Bear in mind, if you go first, you could romp to the win. If Rich goes first, who knows? It does get more difficult as we get towards the end.
I'll go first. I'll be brave.
Okay, so we've started with Jan Åge Fjørtoft with 84 appearances. Our next player is Jan Molby. Is Jan Molby higher or lower than Fjørtoft?
He's got to be higher.
He's actually lower. It's
because it's
30
first division. Come on, come on,
35
Joe.
appearances for Liverpool.
Tricked me
we're
there. Got me there.
Yeah.
So we're back over to you, Rich. Another Jan Vertonghen.
So higher than
Jan Molby at 35 appearances.
My God, higher.
So yeah, Jan Vertonghen, 232 appearances for Spurs. So we stay with you, Rich. Patrick Vieira, higher or lower than 232 of Vertonghen?
Gotta be higher.
Again, it is higher, 307 for Arsenal and a short spell at Manchester City. What about another Patrick Berger? Is he higher or lower than Vieira with 307?
Carl, I've had a lovely day. I'm saying lower.
You are correct. It's 229 appearances spread across 12 consecutive seasons for Liverpool, Portsmouth and Aston Villa. What about his Czech compatriot Vladimir Smicer?
What was Berger before?
229.
Smicer was injured a lot, so I'm going to say lower.
You are correct. It's actually 121 appearances in 6 seasons for Liverpool. We move from Smicer and 121 appearances to Mark Crossley.
Mark Crossley blended into from the first division to the Premier. Nottingham Forest, Middlesbrough, Fulham, higher.
It is higher, 204 appearances. Fantastic knowledge there as well. Forest, Middlesbrough and Fulham. Yeah, as a Welsh international. You are 4 from the end, Rich. You're on a roll. So we've had Mark Crossley with 204 appearances. Our next player is Dennis Wise.
Oh, it's got to be higher.
Dennis Wise is higher, 278 appearances for Chelsea and Leicester. After Dennis Wise, it's Colin Hendry. Dennis Wise had 278. Where does Colin Hendry rank?
Colin Hendry has his Blackburn phase, but I don't see, and then he got injured, so I'm saying lower.
It is lower, 218 appearances for Blackburn, Coventry and Bolton, 2 to go. Colin Hendry, how about another Scottish Colin? Colin Calderwood.
I'm not going to lose it on Colin Calderwood. No.
Is Colin Calderwood higher or lower than Colin Hendry's 280?
280?
18, 218.
18, Jesus, that doesn't help. So he's late into it. He goes to Spurs. Then he has Villa. I don't think he can match that. So I'm saying lower.
You are correct. It is 189 appearances. Joe, you're going to have to sit this out and watch because it all rests on Rich.
I'm enjoying.
With a sudden death penalty. So Colin Calderwood, 189 appearances. Obviously, we know about his Swindon links. To win it, Rich, another man famously with Swindon links, Paolo Di Canio. Colin Calderwood has 189 Premier League appearances. Will Joe snatch it at the end, or will you take it? Is Paolo Di Canio higher or lower?
Paolo Di Canio would be the death of me. I'm happier that Colin didn't down me, but I fear that Paolo might. So West Ham, Sheffield Wednesday, Charlton, lower.
Rich, Paolo Di Canio is higher by 190 appearances and 66 goals. You name the clubs as well. Incredible knowledge, but unfortunately, Paolo Di Canio has thwarted you at the end. Joe, I mean, how was that?
Does that mean I win? Does that double or nothing? Do I get the lot for doing none of the work? That's great. I love it. Perfect.